an accidental discovery that saved a life. As we live in our daily routines, we don't think that something crazy will ever happen to us. We understand that it's possible, but we never expect anything radical to take place. Two teenagers from Pennsylvania never thought they'd be involved in a discovery that would change lives. But sometimes life makes plans for you without your permission. When these boys saw a wrecked car in the forest, they decided to investigate, and ultimately made the biggest difference they ever could have dreamt possible. Let's start this amazing life-saving story, but before we start, don't forget to hit the like button and also subscribe to our channel to get some interesting stuff. One night, Alec, Yanisko, and Joe Delvecchio went out for an ATV ride. They never expected to find anything out of the ordinary. They probably expected to have a great time of their lives and not get distracted by anything else. As young men in their late teens, Alec was 15 and Joe was 18, their amount of responsibilities were low, and that's perfectly okay. They never expected to go above and beyond what was asked of them. First, they had to find the perfect place to ride their ATVs. Luckily, there was a forest in close proximity to where they lived. It was a very popular location for hikers and bikers, and since they were familiar with the spot, they were confident that it would be the perfect place for their little joyride. As they zoomed around on their ATVs, it seemed as though the night would end like any other night, and that was when it happened. They saw something strange within a thicket of trees in the distance. Of course, although their interest was piqued, they had no idea what they were about to find. From a distance, there appeared to be a car sitting in an unusual angle. This in itself was odd, but something else didn't seem quite right. The obvious thing that didn't feel right was the fact that the car was parked around a quarter of a mile from the closest road. The boys looked at each other and wondered if they should go check it out. It was clear that the night was taking a life of its own, and they had no idea what they were about to discover. There were so many questions to be answered, and their curiosities were bursting, so they finally decided to get closer. As they neared the car, they found out that the vehicle was stuck. They still couldn't really tell if there was someone in the car. Another question that popped into their minds was the duration of how long the car had been there. It was getting dark, and they wondered if they should turn around, but their basic instincts told them to keep going. Finally, these brave boys got close enough to the car to figure a few things out. One of the things they found out was that no one was in the car. After that, they realized that the car had gotten caught on a log. They could also see that the windows were heavily smashed. This car was seemingly abandoned, and even though some of the questions were answered, it opened up a barrage of new ones. Out of all the questions they had, the most obvious one was this: where was the driver? Was he or she close by? They decided to investigate the car to find out everything they could about the possible identity of the driver, checking the trunk, the glove compartment, and under the seats as well. They also searched around the forest to see if they could find a clue of some kind. Finally, they found something that seemed promising. It was in the car that they found a pretty appealing lead. It was a Sam's Club retail card, and on it was written the name Edwin Kosick. This was pretty encouraging for the boys, but it didn't help them get any closer as to where this man was. Assuming that Edwin was the owner of the car, they decided to find out everything they could about this man. They deeply hoped that finding out more about him would eventually lead him to where he was. Thanks to the advent of modern-day technology, they realized there was a very simple way of potentially finding out who or where Edwin Kosick was. They opened their handy-dandy smartphones and immediately jumped onto their Facebook app, where there was a good chance Edwin had an account. After typing his name online, they were stunned by a number of things. First of all, they discovered that Edwin Kosick was a well-known and respected federal judge who also happened to be 92 years of age. Second of all, and more importantly, they discovered in multiple recent news reports that Edwin had in fact been missing for 2 days. The boys couldn't believe it. Were they about to become helpers in finding a missing person? After realizing that this old man was missing, they wondered where he could be and kept searching around the area. But after a while, they realized that they needed to take it to the authorities. But even though the police had joined them in their search, they still couldn't find Edwin. What did all of this mean? They started to worry that something bad might have happened to him. The police had organized a massive search party to find Edwin, which actually included a number of specially trained dogs. Needless to say, the boys never expected to be spending their night like this. After further investigation, Edwin's family members revealed that he'd been taking medication to help him with memory loss. Edwin's son in particular was extremely worried about this fact because of obvious reasons. Was it possible that his father's memory loss had contributed to him getting lost after getting stuck in the forest and looking for his way home? There were so many possible things that could have happened, and people were anxious to see him found. As if things couldn't get any stranger, a surveillance videotape from 1:30 a.m. the previous night was found, one that showed Edwin trying to get into a closed ShopRite supermarket. The worrisome thing about the ShopRite surveillance footage was that when Edwin realized he couldn't get into the store, he left in the opposite direction of his home. He had also left his wallet and phone at home that day, so he couldn't purchase anything and nobody could get in touch with him. It made the whole situation more mysterious, and nobody could figure out where he'd been trying to go or what he had wanted to do. Civil attorney Chris Powell was up in arms about Judge Kosic's disappearance. "We want to know what happened to him," he said. He demanded answers, and the police officers assured everyone that they were doing everything they could. Thankfully, it would seem that their stress was coming to a close. Right when it seemed like finding him seemed almost impossible, a shining light emerged from the ashes, and it gave them all a huge sign of relief. At last, Edwin Kosic was found. People were ecstatic to hear this news, but they were equally curious about a number of things. Where was he found? Who found him? And was he okay? Interestingly enough, it was one of these specially trained police dogs who found him, and it was only 100 yards from where the car was initially found by the boys. Imagine that. As far as Edwin's condition, he was thankfully alive, but he was lying on the ground and seemed fragile. Once Edwin Kosic was found, authorities rushed him to the hospital to make sure that he didn't have any serious injuries. His son reported that the judge had some older injuries, such as broken ribs, that might have been exacerbated by the crash and his time in the woods. But once doctors checked Edwin thoroughly, they were happy to announce that he was in fair condition. Amazingly, he had not sustained any serious damage from the ordeal. Due to Edwin's memory loss, it was difficult to piece together what had happened, but the judge slowly helped authorities put together an outline of events. It seems that Edwin had endured a severe episode of memory loss while driving his car and completely lost track of where he was. He became disoriented and confused and drove his car into the woods. There he hit a log and couldn't drive any further. He stumbled out of his vehicle and collapsed on the ground about 100 yards from his car. That's when our two teenage heroes come in. Fortunately, Alec, Yanisko, and Joe Delvecchio had decided to drive their ATVs right into the woods where Edwin Kosic had crashed his car. They were in the right place at the right time, and they reported it to the police, thus saving the judge's life. If the boys hadn't been in the area, or if they had just ignored the strange car in the woods, it might have been too late by the time Edwin was located. Who is Edwin Kosic anyway? Kosic is a well-known and well-respected federal judge. He served more than 30 years on the bench and is best known for giving long prison sentences to two corrupt judges who had accepted money in exchange for sending juveniles to detention centers. The case gained Kosic a great deal of respect. He continued working as a judge until health problems forced him to move to inactive senior status in February 2017. Teenagers may have saved a man's life, but they don't see what they did as heroic. In fact, Joe Delvecchio said the boys were just glad they could help. The pair went to visit Edwin Kosic at the hospital, where they were able to speak with him and see that he was safe and sound. They were honored to meet the judge. After it was all said and done, Delvecchio said he's considering becoming a police officer. Seems like he's already on his way. Shortly after Edwin Kosic recovered, he went to see the teenage boys who had saved his life again, this time at an award ceremony. That's right, the judge was in the audience when Alec, Yanisko, and Joe Delvecchio were presented with an award for their actions in front of their parents and classmates. They sure deserved it too. Their quick thinking and smart actions saved a man's life, and he and his family will always be grateful. It sounds crazy that all of this started from two teenagers going out to have fun on their ATVs, but this is indeed the case. Although the boys weren't the ones who officially found him, they found his abandoned car, and therefore it was thanks to them that the police knew where to look. Alec and Joe were not only given awards and commended by the police department, they were thanked extensively by Edwin's son, who said he doesn't know how he can ever repay them. This is all about our today's story. Please don't forget to subscribe to our channel and share the video with your friends.